Achuta Star Wars fans, and welcome back to the Rule of Two. We are your hosts, Aiden and Jackson, and today we bring you on a trip across the galaxy to the most recent episode of the Book of Boba Fett, Episode 4, The Gathering Strom. This week's episode opens to yet another back-to-flashback. I think this is one of the coolest flashbacks we've seen so far. Boba is yet again riding his bantha through the Dune Sea, towards what would eventually become his palace. As he scopes into the front door, he sees many Gamorrean and Nikto guards, and he tells the bantha, "Not today, old girl." Then we see Boba and the bantha sitting around a fire at night. As Boba reaches for more food, he sees a flare flash in the distance, as the Mandalorian theme plays in the background. For those who have not seen The Mandalorian, this flashback takes place during The Mandalorian Episode 5, The Gunslinger, where we see Din Djarin face off against Fennec Shand. In this episode, Din takes on Fennec's bounty by teaming up with a man named Calacan. In an attempt to catch their bounty, Din sets off in a speeder towards Fennec, while Calacan fires a flash shot to blind Fennec. After catching her, Din sets off to find another form of transportation, while Calacan stays behind to guard Fennec. Unfortunately, in an attempt to pin Calacan against Din, Fennec gets shot in the abdomen by Calacan. This is where Episode 4 continues, as Boba rides his bantha in the direction of the flash shot to find a wounded Fennec laying on the ground. Boba decides to take the dying Fennec to a modification parlor where she is given the cybernetic implants that save her life. Fennec then wakes up around a campfire seeing Boba and his bantha. Boba tells Fennec that he is the legendary bounty hunter, Boba Fett, and that he was saved by the Tuskens who welcomed him as one of their own. Boba tells Fennec that her debt to him will be paid off if she helps him recover his fire spray gunship, also known as the Slave One, that is being held at Jabba's palace. They arrive at Jabba's palace under nightfall and scope out the area. Fennec deploys a device that sneaks into the palace, scanning for enemies. During this reconnaissance, Boba bids farewell to his beloved bantha, who is now free to roam the Dune Sea. Boba tells Fennec of his plans after recovering his ship. He will take back his armor and kill Bib Fortuna, the pig that double-crossed him. Fennec questions why Boba would want to head a Gotra, and delivers the line, "People like us don't get to decide when we're finished," which could be foreshadowing a potential fate for Boba. The device comes back, showing that there are too many guards for Fennec and Boba to handle alone, so they decide to go in quiet. During a guard change, Fennec cuts into an exterior drainage hole, which takes them up to the kitchen. They stealthily get out of the vent, not without attracting attention from a sous chef droid. Boba knocks his droid down, which garners the attention of the chef droid. This scene was a major callback to one of the best Star Wars films of all time, Revenge of the Sith. As the chef droid prepares for Boba's attack, he starts to swing his knife hands in circular motions, just how General Grievous swung his quad lightsabers. Also, Boba approaches the chef droid with his gaffy stick in the same way that Obi-Wan approached Grievous with his lightsaber. Unfortunately, we don't get to see the ultimate duel between the chef droid and Boba, as Fennec sneaks up behind the droid and slices his neck with one of her tools.
Jedi scum!
The duo then moves to the hangar bay, where Boba is reunited with the glorious Slave One. The alarm is sounded, and a group of Nikto and Gamorrean guards advance on Boba and Fennec. While Fennec holds off the attackers, Boba prepares Slave One for their escape. The duo encounters a problem, as the hangar door is still closed, but Fennec defeats the palace guards and shoots the weighted lock. The Slave One is now in the hands of its proper owner, Boba Fett. Boba asks Fennec where she would like to be dropped off, since her debt is now paid. Fennec replies with, "I'll go for the ride." And we see the start of the prosperous relationship between Fennec Shand and Boba Fett. Boba tells Fennec that he has some scores to settle, and as his first act after acquiring Slave One back, he obliterates the Nikto bike gang that slaughtered his tribe of Tuskens. His next destination is to the Sarlacc pit he escaped from in the first episode. Boba believes that he will find his armor here, so he flies Slave One cautiously into the pit. However, the seemingly dormant Sarlacc awakes before Boba and Fennec, and it latches its slimy arms around the hull of Slave One, pulling the duo towards certain death. Boba tries to use the ship's guns, but the bolts are blocked by the sand. In an act of quick thinking, Fennec presses a button that brings back one of the greatest sounds in all of Star Wars. The button opens a hatch at the back of Slave One, which releases the renowned seismic charge down into the pit.
Fire in the hole!
Boba lands the Slave One to go search for his armor, but nothing turns up. While eating around a campfire, Boba proposes the idea of forming his own house to Fennec. He offers a spot in his house to her, since he needs brain and muscle, of which she has both. Fennec is hesitant, prioritizing her freedom, and says that the Tuskens have made Boba soft. He counters, claiming that the Tuskens had the opposite effect, and that you can only get so far without a tribe. This is perhaps foreshadowing the possible team-up of Boba's past bounty hunter allies. The episode then switches back to the present, where Boba gets out of the Bacta tank, and a droid tells him that he is fully healed from his scars. Fennec informs Boba about the Major Domo and their quest to find the mayor, who remains unfound. Boba decides then to suit up and head into town. We then see Black Chrysanthemum sitting inside the Sanctuary Cantina as he looks across the room to his species' mortal enemy, Trandoshans. Black Chrysanthemum uses his ferocity again and ragdolls the Trandoshans all around the bar. He picks up one of the Trandoshans when Garsa Fwip tells him that he should stop, complimenting his gladiator years, and that it is beneath him to hurt some lousy Trandoshans. She gives Chrysanthemum the option of releasing the Trandoshan, and she will pay off his drinking debt. However, Chrysanthemum rips the Trandoshan's arm off, and gives one of the servers a stack of coins. Boba, who is watching the whole event happen, follows Chrysanthemum outside and offers him a job.
Hey, mate. Looks like you could use a job.
The episode then cuts to the palace again, where we see the feast from the trailer is occurring. Boba has invited the other rulers of Mos Espa, the Trandoshans, Aqualish, and Klatooinians, to offer a partnership between them all to rebel against the growing threat of the Pikes and their spice trade. The rulers protest this proposition, saying that they already trade spice on Tatooine, and that Boba should not be daimyo, when the Rancor jumps up at them, scaring the rulers off their seats. None of the rulers agree to an alliance, since it is not their territories that are being threatened by the Pikes, and why would they waste blood for Boba's conflict with the Pikes? Boba then changes his proposal, asking the rulers to remain neutral during this conflict, which they all agree to. As the rulers leave the palace, Boba and Fennec discuss from a ledge about the impending war with the Pikes. Fennec asks about the treasury, to which Boba replies with that they have enough credits, and what they need is muscle. Fennec tells Boba that they can find muscle if they know where to look. And this week's episode then closes with the Mandalorian theme playing in the background, foreshadowing Din Djarin's return.
We must prepare for war.
How much treasure do we have in reserve?
I have plenty of credits. What I'm short on is muscle.
Credits can buy muscle, if you know where to look.
After that wonderful recap of this week's episode, we have a lot to unpack in terms of predictions and what has been foreshadowed. Let's begin with the most obvious foreshadowing of the now iconic Mandalorian theme playing at the end of the episode. This is blatantly foreshadowing the return of the Mandalorian for the first time in over a year, and we might be getting to see him work alongside Fennec and Boba for the second time, when inevitably Boba attempts to hire him as an ally to help win the fight against the Pike Syndicate. I believe that Din will almost definitely show up in the next episode of the Book of Boba Fett, however I do not think that he will play a huge role and will be purely there to aid in Boba's story. Much like how Ahsoka Tano made an appearance within The Mandalorian, she was only there to further the Mandalorian story. In addition, however, we saw a quick snippet of what was to come with the character in terms of her looking for the whereabouts of Grand Admiral Thrawn.
Now tell me, where is your master? Where is Grand Admiral Thrawn?
It's my hope and prediction that Mando's cameo in the Book of Boba Fett will be very similar in that aspect to that of Ahsoka's. We will see Din Djarin for an episode, maybe throughout until the finale, if we're lucky, but as Star Wars fans we have to keep in mind he can't steal the show from Boba. I do as well predict that within one of the episodes that Din shows up in, we will see a glimpse of what is to come for The Mandalorian Season 3. What that could be is a mystery, maybe a hint to traveling back to Mandalore, or maybe even something to do with Grogu, even though that is more far-fetched. On top of all this, I'm sure we will see the Darksaber, and fingers crossed, it will be in combat. As powerful as Din Djarin is, I do not think that him alone and who Boba so far has recruited will be enough to bring down the Pike Syndicate and prevent them from turning Tatooine into a spice trading hub, especially if the Pikes are the frontrunner for a much larger threat like Crimson Dawn, which I'll get into in a bit. Like mentioned last week, this all leaves the possibility for other bounty hunters to show up within the show. In our last week, we said that Cad Bane was our number one pick for who was going to be called to Boba's aid, but with Din Djarin showing up, I think that it isn't as likely for Bane to make an appearance. This is because Bane is more of a major character for a cameo in our opinion, and Mando has already taken that spot in the show. I wouldn't rule him completely out of the picture, but I do predict that he won't show up this season, and if he does, I do think it will be on the side of the opposition. This, however, does not rule out the possibility of other bounty hunters showing up as minor cameos within the story. This is where last week's prediction of Bossk and Dengar, in our eyes, become a little more possible. Bossk and Boba have an interesting relationship. The two have been in contact and taking out bounties with one another since Boba was a teenager. At this age, Boba was very immature and needed guidance throughout the realm of bounty hunting. This is where Bossk kind of stepped in as a mentor, creating a complicated bond between the two criminals. Since their travels together in the Clone Wars and throughout the comics, Bossk has begun to disapprove of Boba due to his growing dislike of the Bounty Hunters Guild. In addition, we saw in the comics that Bossk and Black Krrsantan despise each other and have even fought, with Bossk coming very close to killing the Wookiee in close quarters combat. If we saw the two meet in live action, I'd be very curious to see how the two would interact. Dengar and Boba have quite the history as well, most of it being found within Legends and some key parts of it being debunked within the first few episodes of the Book of Boba Fett. One thing is for sure though, in Legends, Dengar and Boba have played a large role in each other's life. As a matter of fact, in one Legend story, Dengar even saved Boba from the Sarlacc pit. However, we know that to be incorrect. I do on the other hand predict that we might see him in the future. Finally, on to our last prediction, and one that as the episodes progress, we at the Rule of Two begin to see as more of a possibility. That being that the Pike Syndicate is the front runner for Crimson Dawn. I think that if this prediction becomes true, that it will be revealed at the end of the season by hopefully showing Emilia Clarke as Kira. Crimson Dawn was founded on the planet of Tatooine by Darth Maul, and with him dead to Obi-Wan in Rebels and Dryden Voss killed by Kira, this hopefully means she'll be the one to make an appearance. This would set up future seasons of the Book of Boba Fett and help link more of the Star Wars universe together. This prediction roots with the Pikes as we saw them maintain a sketchy alliance with Crimson Dawn in the movie Solo: A Star Wars Story. We believe that this prediction is the next step for the show and are excited to see if it becomes a reality. Thank you guys for watching this week's analysis of the Book of Boba Fett Episode 4. Let us know your thoughts and predictions from the episode down in the comments below. And remember, always there are two. No more, no less.